Morning. Today I've been brought to you by Food for Cabin Fever. I know it's been a rough time for all of you and I am bored to tears, so I decided I'm going to do what I've been told I do best: make soup. Today I thought I would make baby lima bean soup. You can use any brand, doesn't matter. To me, they're all the same. What I did last night to start with was put this 1 pound bag of dried baby lima beans in this pot, filled it up maybe halfway with water so all the beans were covered, and let it sit out overnight covered. And this morning when I came down, I looked in the pot and you could see that the beans have plumped up some, and so I drained the water, put fresh water in, and now I have it here, and the beans have been cooking for about an hour. I put with the beans and the water, it's about halfway full, about 10 cups of water to start with. To not make such a long video, I have pre-cut everything. So to start with, I have the beans that have cooked for about an hour, and I'm going to add half an onion chopped and half a head of garlic chopped. Add it with the beans. And also, I've got about 3 stalks of celery chopped. Stir that up. Stir slowly so that you don't break up the beans. Beans do not like to be boiled to a strong boil, or they don't like to be stirred a lot. They break up, the skin comes off. It's not good. So I'm going to add to this 14 ounces of diced peeled tomatoes, or you can add a couple of fresh chopped tomatoes, whatever you like. But I'm adding 1 can of diced tomatoes. Let that heat up. Like I said, not high heat. Let it warm up nicely so that the beans you don't destroy the beans. No, don't mix them too much. And let that heat up for a while. And here we have grains. I've got brown rice, about 1/4 cup of brown rice. I've got 1/4 cup of barley and 1/4 cup of hemp hearts, which I discovered are very high in protein, omegas, and it's called a superfood. So I decided that I've been adding this to my cooking, and really can't taste it. It's just something good for you. And also I have a 1/4 cup of quinoa and a little sprinkle of chia, maybe 1/8 of a cup. All together, you're going to put in about 1 cup of grains, give or take. If you like more grains, you can add them, but don't add too much, because then you're not going to have much broth. So basically about 1 cup of grains. You're going to let this heat up a little bit. And then we're going to put all the grains into the pot. Also, we have kale. I chopped up some kale, and you can put either kale, or you can put escarole, you can put spinach, whatever green leafy vegetable you have is nice to add in there. My favorite is escarole, but nowadays, under the circumstances with all this going on with the virus, we're limited to what we find. So I got some kale locally and at Kroger, and I decided I'll use kale. But I do love escarole. It's my favorite. So I got about, not quite a head, a little less than a head of kale here that I'm going to add. And I also cut up, chopped, and peeled 2 potatoes. Peel the potatoes because potato skins don't do well in soup. They come off and they just don't do well in soup. And I have about 3 or 4 carrots peeled and chopped. And in a minute or so, we're going to put all of this stuff in the pot. Once it heats up a little bit more, like I said, I don't want to put the heat too high. We don't want to boil the beans and break them up. The skins fall off. Also, if you don't like onion, which I had family members that don't like onion. My mother used to get a fresh onion, cut it in half and peel it, and just put half of it whole, not chopped. She'd put it in the soup. After the soup was well cooked, she would just scoop out that onion because some of her kids, my brother, he would just pick out the onion. He hated onions, so she would just throw the onion, unfortunately, away. I like onion, I like garlic, so I throw everything in. It's good for you, it's high in fiber, and it's good all around to eat it. Anyway, now I'm going to put the grains in to the pot. And stir them up a little bit, slowly, not to disturb the beans. But you want to make sure you scoop the stuff from the bottom so that it doesn't stick to the bottom. We're going to let this cook for a little bit, and then we're going to add the kale. Just let it heat up some. And we're going to be putting in the kale. The carrots and potatoes, since they don't need a lot of cooking, I usually put them in last. Okay, we're going to put the kale in. And stir it up. Slowly. And we're going to let that cook for a while. And we'll put these on the side. And now we're going to look at the herbs. First of all, salt. Gotta have salt. We're going to start with a teaspoon of salt, which is not a whole lot for this big pot. We'll start with a teaspoon, and we've got cumin. We'll start with a teaspoon of cumin. We've got turmeric, and we're going to start with a teaspoon of turmeric. And I say start with because we all have different taste buds. Turmeric is really good for you. I read about it and thought, well, it's really good for you. You can hardly taste it. Doesn't really have much of a taste. It smells nice. And the cumin, they both smell good, and it's supposed to be really good for you. And I think it goes really well with beans. So I start with a teaspoon of each. After the soup is done, you're going to taste it. If you want to add a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper or cumin or turmeric, just, everything is to taste. Here's some black pepper. Black pepper, I think I'll just add half a teaspoon or less of black pepper. Half a teaspoon of black pepper. I have here cayenne pepper. My late husband loved it, and he would always put in a lot of it. I'm going to only put in half a teaspoon because if little children eat this soup, which they don't, because my kids don't, my grandchildren do not like the bean soups very much. They're a little picky, but my children and my friends just love this soup, and I love it. So what the hell? Can't please everybody. We're going to let that cook for about 30 minutes or so, and then we're going to add the carrots, potatoes, and in the end, we're going to just top it off with a little bit of olive oil. So we're going to let that cook for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to add carrots and potatoes, and then we're going to let it cook for about another hour or until the beans are tender. Taste the soup. If it needs more salt, add it. If it needs more spice, more turmeric or cumin, you can flavor it as you wish. Also, if it gets to be, if you need more water, you can add a little bit more water. If it's a little tight and too many vegetables in here, you can just add more water. If you want it more brothy, just remember that if you add more water, you're going to need a little bit more salt, maybe some more spices. But use your own imagination and your own flavors, your own tastes, and add to it whatever you wish. Within reason, of course. So, thank you. And I will get back to you as soon as it's done. I'll show you a photo of it. Thank you. Oh, an hour or as long as it takes for the beans to soften up. And taste it once it's cooked. And you got the flavors just the way you like them. Add about maybe a tablespoon or more of olive oil, extra virgin, first cold press is the best, what I prefer. It's the extra virgin first cold press. Okay, whatever. Anyway, add that last once it's cooked. Taste it. If it needs more salt or spice, pepper, whatever, just add it and enjoy. Hi again. Soup's ready. I did add an extra 2 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of turmeric, and a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. But if you have a blood pressure problem, you might want to cut down on the salt. If you have a gluten problem, you might want to check out the grains and eliminate the grains with gluten and replace them with whatever you like. Here's to our health. Be safe, stay healthy, and try to avoid cabin fever. Perfect.